Daniel Morgan stood in the backyard of his newly purchased home, inhaling the crisp morning air that carried the scent of pine needles and wet earth. The woods stretched behind his property like a green ocean, 5 acres of dense, quiet wilderness that had been the selling point of this home. That land, according to the deed he'd read a dozen times, was his. All of it. But as he sipped his coffee and wandered toward the tree line, something caught his eye. A piece of paper was nailed crookedly to the old oak that marked the edge of the woods. The words were written in large, angry strokes. "Do not enter the woods." No explanation, no name, just the warning. As if scrawled in haste or fear, he looked around. Nothing moved. No birds chirped. Just the eerie hush of morning, fog draping the forest like a veil. Something felt off. He tore the note down and crumpled it, brushing off the strange feeling creeping up his spine. Probably some overzealous neighbor or leftover prank from the previous owner. Still, he couldn't shake the sensation that eyes were on him. That night, Daniel sat on the porch, watching the moon cast jagged shadows across the treetops. The woods were silent, almost unnaturally so. Then he saw it, a figure standing still between 2 trees. Tall, motionless, watching. At first he thought it might be a deer, until he noticed the glint of metal. A badge? A flashlight clipped to a belt. He stood up quickly. "Hello?" he called out. The figure vanished into the darkness. The next morning, he found boot prints in the soft soil near his fence, too clean and uniform to be random hikers. Someone had been there, watching, possibly more than once. He decided to walk the property line, confirming the boundaries once again. According to the surveyor's map, everything from the back fence to the creek nearly half a mile out was his. Yet as he approached the tree line, something new caught his attention. A narrow path had been cleared through the underbrush. Not an animal trail, but freshly trampled. And at the start of it, half buried beneath the leaves, was a metal spike with a thin strip of neon orange tape, marked private, restricted access. Restricted by who? His mind reeled with questions as he snapped photos of the tape and spike. None of this had shown up during closing. No mention in the HOA rules packet either. He'd actually read every page. The property was outside the jurisdiction of any conservation easement or zoning oddities. So why did someone feel the need to stake claims and leave anonymous threats? That evening, Daniel visited the HOA office to ask about the sign and the strange figure in the woods. He was met by Brenda Klein, the HOA president, a woman with icy posture and an expression that never quite reached her eyes. "You must be the new owner of 317 Ash Hollow," she said, folding her hands tightly. "Yes, we've had concerns." "Concerns?" Daniel raised an eyebrow. "About what?" "That someone's trespassing on my land." Brenda's smile didn't falter. "About you trespassing in the protected buffer zone. That land may appear on your deed, but it's subject to Oakcrest's environmental provisions. We advise homeowners to avoid it entirely." Daniel stared at her. "Protected by who?" "The HOA. I wasn't told. You've been warned," she said, standing. "Stay out of the woods. You wouldn't want to violate your agreement so soon after moving in." The conversation ended with a handshake that felt more like a threat. That night, Daniel installed motion sensors along the back fence. He had a feeling he'd need them. 3 days passed without incident. No more strange visitors. No new notes. Daniel began to think maybe it had all been a misunderstanding. That illusion shattered on a fog-drenched Thursday morning. He was walking his German Shepherd, Ghost, along the back trail when the dog suddenly halted. Ears perked, low growl rumbling in his throat. Daniel followed Ghost's gaze. and his stomach dropped. A new chain-link fence now ran through the woods behind his home, slicing across the forest floor like a scar. It hadn't been there a week ago. The silver metal glinted with condensation, and attached to one section was a freshly laminated sign. HOA property, no trespassing. Daniel's hands clenched. He knelt beside the nearest fence post. The soil was freshly disturbed. Whatever this was, it had been installed overnight. By whom? And how had they done it without waking him? He checked the surveillance footage from his back cameras the moment he got home. Between 2:11 and 4:06 a.m., the motion lights near the tree line flicked on twice, but no figures were caught on film. Just movement, fast and coordinated, like someone knew how to avoid detection. The footage left him shaken. Later that day, he marched back into the HOA office. Brenda Klein was waiting with her signature, tight-lipped smile, flanked by two other board members he hadn't met. Daniel didn't sit. There's a fence behind my house. That wasn't there before. What gives you the right to build on my property? Brenda didn't even blink. It's not your property, Mr. Morgan. That portion falls under what we refer to as a buffer zone. That's not what the deed says. She shrugged. The Oakcrest Environmental Covenant allows us to protect sensitive areas from disruption. Your parcel borders such a region. He narrowed his eyes. This isn't a nature preserve. There are no wetlands or endangered birds back there. She finally leaned forward, her voice low and clipped. Mr. Morgan, some parts of this neighborhood were developed over land with complicated histories. This is about protecting the community, not just the land. Daniel blinked. Complicated? What kind of history? The other board member, a middle-aged man with a pinched face and eyes that wouldn't meet his, cleared his throat. That's not relevant. We suggest you respect the signage and the fence. Or what? Continued non-compliance could result in formal citations, fines, possibly a community hearing. Daniel chuckled coldly. For walking on land I own. Brenda didn't laugh. We're not threatening you, Mr. Morgan. We're protecting you. The phrasing chilled him. Back home, he walked the length of the fence again. This time more, carefully. Midway through, he noticed something disturbing. The fence wasn't built in a straight line. It curved sharply around a small rise in the ground. A moss-covered mound that looked unnaturally symmetrical, like something was buried beneath. Nearby, an old wooden stake stuck out of the ground, nearly rotted away. Scribbled in faded red, paint were the letters, SR, Class 4. Daniel took a picture, then Googled the code later. What he found was unsettling. Class 4 containment was terminology used by old environmental agencies, usually referring to dangerous, experimental waste sites. His hands trembled as he closed the tab. Why would the HOA build a fence around a buried containment site and then pretend it was an ecological buffer? And more importantly, what were they really trying to keep him out of? That night, the motion sensor pinged again. But this time, when Daniel checked the footage, there was something new. A figure, hooded, carrying a shovel. And it wasn't heading into the woods. It was coming out. Daniel didn't sleep that night. He sat hunched at his dining table, frame by frame scrubbing through the grainy night vision footage. The figure was hooded, gloved, and moved with unsettling purpose. At 2:48 a.m., it emerged from the woods just beyond the fence, shovel slung over one shoulder, and headed straight for the spot near the moss-covered mound. It didn't dig. It checked the soil, kneeling, brushing it with one hand, as if confirming something was still there. Then, without a glance at the camera, the figure melted back into the trees. Ghost growled low every time the frame lingered on that figure. At dawn, Daniel grabbed a flashlight, gloves, and a crowbar. With Ghost trailing at his heels, he headed for the mound. He hesitated at the fence, then without a second thought, vaulted it. He wasn't trespassing. He was reclaiming his land. The soil over the mound was disturbed, just as the footage showed. Kneeling down, Daniel gently brushed away leaves and twigs. A flat circular metal surface lay just beneath, rusted, covered in decades of grime. He scraped it clean and froze. It was a hatch, circular, sealed, industrial, bolted shut, and stamped faintly into the center was a faded emblem. A triangle with a snake, curling around a biohazard symbol. Government issued, possibly military. No labels, no warnings, no way to know how deep it went. He snapped photos of everything. Just as he stood to leave, Ghost let out a sudden bark. Short, sharp, alert. Daniel spun. A man stood on the other side of the fence. HOA badge, dark uniform, sunglasses. Despite the low light, "You're not supposed to be back here," the man said calmly. Daniel squared his shoulders. "This is my land." The man didn't. He simply raised a small device, a phone or radio, and muttered, "He found it." Then he turned and walked away. By the time Daniel climbed back over the fence and sprinted after him, the man had disappeared between the houses. No tire tracks, no name badge, no trace. Daniel's gut twisted. This wasn't just about an overreaching HOA anymore. Something deeper was happening. Something well coordinated, buried under decades of silence. That hatch, the figure with the shovel, the glowing badge on a man who vanished like a ghost. It didn't add up. Later that morning, Daniel received a certified letter, violation notice, trespassing into restricted common area, penalty $1,500 fine, second offense, subject to HOA hearing, and possible revocation of residency. Daniel laughed bitterly as he read it, then immediately called the HOA office. Brenda Klein answered after 2 rings. "Brenda," he said, keeping his voice cold. "You sent someone to my backyard last night. He crossed the fence line and checked a sealed hatch. I have it on video." There was a long pause. Then, "I don't know what you think you saw, Mr. Morgan, but I suggest you stop snooping. For your own safety." Daniel's blood went cold. "Is that a threat?" "No," Brenda replied. "It's a warning." Click. Daniel stared at the dead line. That afternoon, he went to the county assessor's office, requested every available document on his parcel, and started digging through paper files himself. Most were routine. Development permits, surveys, taxes, until he found a file stamped "withdrawn." It had no date, no reason, just one line typed in the comments box. Parcel removed from public access records. Oversight requested by third-party entity. Code SREV Delta. Daniel looked up slowly. What the hell had he bought? Daniel spent the rest of the day lost in a sea of paperwork and unanswered questions. The code SREV Delta appeared nowhere. Online. Not in military documents. Not in environmental databases. Every lead spiraled into dead ends or deleted links. But the phrase "withdrawn from public access records" told him one thing. Someone powerful wanted this place forgotten. He snapped photos of the document and left the county building with his pulse racing. As he stepped into the parking lot, a white SUV with blacked-out windows cruised slowly past him. No plates, no markings. It didn't stop. Just crawled forward like a shark testing the water. When he got home, a cold wind had picked up. The Trees behind his property swayed like nervous sentinels. Daniel checked the hatch side again from a distance. No signs of disturbance. Still, he felt like he was being watched. That night, the third alert hit his phone. 37 a.m. He pulled up the camera feed. The same hooded figure had returned. But this time, it wasn't alone. 2 more figures flanked it, each carrying cylindrical containers. They moved with chilling coordination. In total silence, they approached the hatch, knelt, and began placing the canisters around it in a perfect triangle. Daniel couldn't see what was inside them. But after a few minutes, faint green vapor began to rise from each. Then, as if on cue, the trio stepped back, knelt, and simply waited. After 10 minutes, they rose, and without disturbing the vapor or opening the hatch, vanished back into the woods. Daniel couldn't breathe. What the hell was that ritual? Some kind of containment procedure. The next morning, his mailbox contained a heavy envelope. No postage, no sender. Just a note inside. Mr. Morgan, cease all investigation. You have been warned. The land is not yours to uncover. Taped beneath it was a photo of him sleeping. Taken through his bedroom window, he froze. That afternoon, his neighbor, Mrs. Ellison, a sprightly widow with a garden of plastic flamingos, waved him over as he brought Ghost outside. "You stirring things up back there?" she asked, eyes glittering with strange amusement. Daniel hesitated. "You mean the woods?" She chuckled softly. "They don't like it when people poke around the old ground. That land's been fenced off since before the HOA even existed. My late husband called it burial land. Said he once saw trucks roll in the night. No lights, no sound." Daniel leaned in. "Do you know what was buried?" Mrs. Ellison's face turned grave. "No, and I don't want to. But that fence? That wasn't built to keep people out." Daniel blinked. "What do you mean?" She lowered her voice. "You ever notice how it curves in strange ways? Never in a straight line. It was built to circle something. Not to protect the woods from you, but to protect you from what's in the woods." Chills rippled down Daniel's spine. Back inside, he stared at the images on his wall, the hatch, the fence, the mysterious HOA agent, the class fee stake. The pieces were circling something buried, something dangerous, and very much active. He opened his laptop and began drafting an email to a journalist friend he knew from college. Someone who owed him a favor. If the HOA, or whoever controlled it, wanted silence, they'd picked the wrong man to threaten. But just as he hit send, the power went out, his house went black, and across the backyard, in the trees beyond the fence, 3 green lights blinked once, then vanished. The blackout lasted only 7 minutes, but in that brief span, the silence in Daniel's home felt suffocating. He stood frozen in the dark, clutching his phone with trembling fingers. Ghost prowled near the back door, hackles raised, eyes locked, on the trees. Those 3 green lights, whatever they were, had blinked like sentient eyes, then vanished without a trace. The power returned suddenly, lights flicked back on, appliances beeped, but Daniel's laptop screen remained black, dead, when he tried to power it up. It buzzed once, flashed white, and then displayed a message. Access revoked. Network breach detected. Please report to Security Authority, SRIV. Daniel recoiled. His laptop hadn't just shut down. It had been wiped. And not by a virus. This was precise, tactical, deliberate. The email he had tried to send, gone. Draft erased. Hard drive locked. A cold sweat broke over him as he stared at the screen. "Who the hell are you people?" he whispered. The next day, a drone buzzed over his property. Small, silent, black as pitch. It hovered for 12 seconds above the tree line, just beyond the fence, then zipped away. Not a hobby drone. This was high grade, the kind used by law enforcement or private contractors. He grabbed his binoculars and scanned the woods. And that's when he saw it. A trail camera, mounted on a distant pine. Subtle, camo patterned, aimed directly at the hatch site. Someone had eyes on the ground. Later, he received a summons, delivered by hand, on thick cream-colored paper, embossed, with the oak crest HOA seal. It read, Notice of Special Hearing, Violation of Community Boundaries, and Unauthorized Use of Surveillance Technology. Date, Friday 7 p.m. Location, HOA Community Hall. Attendance mandatory. Daniel stared at the document, a mandatory hearing, for checking his own land and having his own cameras. But part of him wasn't surprised. He was getting too close to something, and they were closing ranks. He arrived at the meeting hall just before 7. The building was unusually quiet. Inside, all the lights were on, but the chairs were empty, except for the 5 people seated at the front table. Brenda Klein, 2 board members, and 2 strangers, both in black suits with matching metal lapel pins, shaped like the same triangle snake biohazard emblem stamped on the hatch. No one spoke as Daniel walked in. Brenda folded her hands. Mr. Morgan, thank you for coming. Daniel didn't sit. You sent agents to my backyard. You erased my data. You tampered with my cameras. And now you summon me here like I've done something wrong. One of the suited men stood. His voice was calm, controlled, but had the edge of command. You've violated more than HOA bylaws, Mr. Morgan. You've breached containment parameters tied to a classified installation. The hatch on your property was part of a federal program known as SR4 Delta, designed for long-term biological quarantine. Its existence was buried for your protection, Daniel scoffed. You mean the public's ignorance was more convenient? The man didn't flinch. No, I mean you were never supposed to dig. Not just because it's dangerous, but because it's not dormant anymore. Silence. Brenda finally added, We've been monitoring small anomalies for months. Electrical disturbances, vibrations, thermal surges. The protocol was simple. Build a perimeter, keep residents unaware, and intervene if necessary. Daniel's mind reeled. You built an entire neighborhood over a quarantine site. No, said the man. The neighborhood was built because of it. To contain it. You were part of the buffer. Daniel stared. And for the first time since this began, he felt trapped. Daniel couldn't move. The idea that his property, his home, was not only sitting atop a sealed biological site, but was deliberately selected as containment infrastructure, sent his mind spiraling. Brenda leaned forward. You were chosen, Mr. Morgan. The home was never for sale on public listings. We planted the ad to see who'd take the bait. Someone without local ties. Curious, maybe reckless. You were a perfect candidate. His jaw clenched. You set me up. It was never personal, the suited man replied. We just needed someone expendable. Daniel lunged forward. Expendable. The second suited agent stood quickly, hand resting on his hip, where a firearm bulged beneath his coat. The silent threat was clear. Daniel stopped, fists tight at his sides. Brenda rose from her chair, slowly as though rehearsed. The entity beneath the hatch is not a virus, not a chemical. It's something worse, something adaptive. Biological, but not native. The first contact traces back to 1982. An unsanctioned research operation that went wrong. Horribly. Daniel narrowed his eyes. Alien. She hesitated. Then, Possibly. A thick pause filled the room. The first agent broke it. The hatch is a Class A containment valve. What you saw the other night were containment specialists performing a chemical recalibration to suppress activity from below. Unfortunately, your proximity may have disrupted the sequence. Daniel's mouth went dry. I didn't touch anything. That doesn't matter, the second agent said. Your presence was enough. The entity reacts to observation. Daniel's breath caught. It knows I saw it. No, the first agent corrected. It knows you know it exists. That's what changes the dynamic. Awareness alters its behavior. It adapts to attention, becomes active. It might already be leaking signals into your environment, maybe even into you. Daniel's heart pounded. You're saying I'm infected? Not infected, Brenda said, but attuned. Psychosomatic echoes have already been observed in test subjects with extended exposure. Hallucinations, paranoia, cognitive distortion. If it's reached out to you, it won't stop. Daniel felt suddenly lightheaded. The dreams, the electrical flickers, the blinking green lights. He staggered backward. You brought me here to what? Lock me away? Kill me? No, the agent said. We brought you here to offer a choice. He slid a folder across the table. Daniel opened it. A new deed. A property. Transfer. Signed and notarized. It listed a secluded parcel in northern Alaska, far from civilization, and a settlement check, blank, awaiting his signature. You leave. Today. We buy you out. You disappear and we re-isolate the zone. Daniel blinked. And if I don't? The second agent's voice turned to ice. Then we classify you as a contamination risk. And contamination gets neutralized. Brenda looked at him. Softer. Now, oddly maternal. You want to fight this, but there's no enemy you can punch. The thing beneath your home has waited 40 years to be seen again. And you saw it. Daniel stood in silence. Then he leaned forward, grabbed the folder, and tucked it under his arm. I'll think about it. They nodded, satisfied. But as Daniel turned to leave, he slipped a tiny object from his pocket. A thumb drive taped, beneath the folder, loaded with camera footage, photos, and scanned documents, and quietly pressed it into the base of the receptionist's potted fern on his way out. Insurance. Because he had no intention of disappearing. He wasn't going to run. He was going to blow the lid off everything. The next morning, Daniel woke up gasping. His sheets were soaked with sweat. His ears rang like pressure was shifting in his skull. He staggered to the bathroom mirror and froze. His eyes were bloodshot. Not with veins, but with thin, glowing threads that pulsed faintly green. He blinked. Once. Twice. Gone. Was he hallucinating? Psychosomatic distortion, like the agent said. He stumbled back, heart pounding, and opened his closet. From a hidden panel, he pulled out a military-grade Faraday pouch, the one he used for tech protection during fieldwork. Inside was an untouched second phone. He opened it, pulled the SD card, and slid it into an old digital recorder. The footage from his backyard, the blinking lights, the vapor canisters, the kneeling figures, all intact, still clear, still damning. That thumb drive hidden at the HOA hall had bought him time, but not safety. The game had changed. He wasn't just dealing with a cover-up. He was standing on something alive, and it was waking up. Later that day, a high-pitched hum filled the air, so loud and sudden it shattered the bulb above his porch light. Ghost barked wildly at the window. Daniel rushed outside. From the tree line, a column of smoke was rising. Not black, but a strange bluish-white mist, drifting upward like an inverted waterfall. The fence's warning lights had gone dark. hiss. Security cameras were fried. Melted internally, as if shorted from the inside. He stepped to the edge of the fence line and stopped cold. The hatch was open. The heavy steel lid, once sealed and bolted, now stood propped at an unnatural angle. A trail of viscous, dark fluid led out into the woods, thick and sluggish, like oil mixed with tar, and at the center of the clearing, something moved. Not a creature, not fully, but a shape. A distortion in the air, like heat waves, shimmering and pulsing. It hovered just above the ground, vibrating faintly. Daniel's chest tightened just looking at it. Then, it spoke, not in words, but in images. His childhood dog, barking happily. His parents' graves. His first kiss. His worst memory. Buried alive under rubble during a volunteer rescue mission in Turkey. Every memory flashed through his mind, with a clarity that made him drop to his knees. The entity wasn't just showing him things. It was rifling through him, exploring his mind like a living library. Then, silence. The shimmer collapsed in on itself and vanished into the forest. Daniel staggered back inside. Dazed and shaking, moments later, his phone buzzed. It was a text message from an unknown number. You've seen it now, so have others. Containment has failed. Beneath that was a location pin. The HOA water treatment facility on the edge of town. His pulse spiked. They weren't just containing the entity underground. They were pumping it, distributing it through infrastructure. The HOA wasn't about lawns and fences. It was a delivery system. He threw a duffel bag together. Flashlights, iodine pills, burner phones, 3 full canisters of pepper gel, and the recorder. He had one mission now. Expose everything before they buried it again. Or before it spread too far to stop. He opened the front door. The white SUV was back. But this time, it wasn't alone. 4 figures stepped out, dressed in black containment suits. Their masks gleaming under the rising sun. No insignias, no names. Ghost growled low in his throat. Daniel whispered to him, "Not yet, buddy." He didn't run. He turned, gritted his teeth, and stepped toward them. The 4 containment agents closed in, with practiced precision, not running, but advancing with the inevitability of a tide. Ghost snarled, teeth bared, fur bristling. Daniel didn't flinch. "You've already lost containment," he said, voice steady. "The hatch is open. It's moving." The lead agent raised a device. A small palm-sized orb, pulsing with blue light. It let out a shrill tone and flashed a message. Subject ID, breach confirmed, Phase 2. Initiate, extraction or neutralization. Ghost lunged. 2 agents moved to intercept. But Daniel was already moving. He dove sideways, flinging a flash charge from his duffel. A non-lethal stun grenade he'd rigged from old camping gear and magnesium shavings. It went off in a burst of searing white. The agents stumbled. Daniel sprinted through the smoke, Ghost right behind him. He didn't head for the woods. He went straight to his truck. In the glove box was the backup drive. A full copy of the footage, documents, and all communications, plugged into a hot router that had been running independently of the house grid since yesterday. As he reached the cab, the router's upload light blinked green. Connection established. He hit send. The entire folder, labeled Oakcrest, SR Delta, leak, began uploading to a secure dead drop on the dark web. It was slow, maybe 10 minutes to finish. He just needed to buy that time. But a sound stopped him cold. Hissing, from the woods. Not snake-like, not gas. It was breathing, from every direction. Trees shook. The mist thickened. curling in unnatural patterns. Daniel stepped back as a massive hum filled the air, a frequency so low it rattled his ribs. Then came the eyes. Hundreds of them. Green, glowing, floating between branches. No bodies, no shadows, just sight. Watching from every angle, and in the center, drifting forward like it had always belonged, the entity emerged again, fully visible now. It had no true form. More like a cluster of transparent muscle fibers, twisted around a shifting core. Its skin, shimmering with every step. A sound like children whispering echoed in the air, yet no mouths moved. It wasn't just looking at Daniel, it was assessing. The containment agents had regrouped, surrounding Daniel and Ghost. One raised a weapon, not a gun, but a device glowing. Violet blue, an energy scatter weapon. We warned you, he said coldly. This thing's awake because of you. It will consume everything. Daniel didn't budge. No, you kept it buried, lied to everyone. You gave it an audience. The agent sneered. Then I'll shut that audience down. But just before he fired, the entity reached out. Not physically, psychically. The agent froze. Eyes wide, mouth open, weapon clattering to the ground. He screamed. The other agents turned to run. One collapsed mid-sprint, convulsing. The mist swallowed them. Daniel stared as the entity drifted closer, but made no move to harm him. Instead, it studied him. Not hostile, not violent, curious, as if it recognized something in him. Perhaps the same thing the HOA saw. A pattern of defiance, a refusal to comply. It spoke again, not in images this time, but in a single clear thought. Witness, spread, survive. And then it vanished, dissipated into the wind, like dust scattered through light. The mist cleared, silence returned, the upload finished. 100% complete. The world would know now. It was out there. The entity, the project, the lies. All of it. Daniel stood by his truck as the sun rose over Oak Crest. The fences were broken. The power lines sparked. The HOA flags lay in tatters on the ground. He looked back once more at the woods. Ghost barked quietly beside him. Let them come. Daniel muttered, I'm not leaving, because this was his land, and now it was watching him too.